Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way.
Oh man, bro, the past week, not even the past week, the past couple days has been an interesting turn of events for your boy, especially on the career route, bro. Cause, dude, I thought my career was set in stone, not set in stone, but like it had a very pretty straightforward path. Like finish up school, probably go join a startup or do a startup or whatever after I graduate, and then see where it goes from there, bro. But even that isn't even really set forth. But a couple days ago, I got a random Slack message in the Soma group chat, or the Soma Slack channel, which is the VC place that I just started at. Honestly, the most valuable part of that entire community, aside from like learning about venture and all these different industries and stuff, which of course is super cool, the most valuable thing by far is the people. The people in that network, bro, they are dogs. And so one of the dogs in that channel, he sensed something about a leadership, not a leadership role, but like a role at a startup. It was like a sales role at some startup. He's like, okay, I know someone who's trying to recruit for one of these startups. If anyone's interested, reach out. I'll connect you with the guy that I know. I was like, oh, I looked at it. It was kind of interesting. I was like, okay, maybe I'll check this out. So I messaged him like, okay, can you connect me with the guy? I'm kind of interested in learning more about this thing. And literally the very first question he asked me was, are you willing to drop out? And because on the application thing, it said that they're looking for someone within the next 2 weeks, and that person has to be willing to drop out. And honestly, they sent that. I was like, okay, I mean, I'll go ahead with it, just throw in my application. So back to the question, he asked me, are you willing to drop out? I was like, bro, honestly, I would be willing to give it a test run. Like, if they interview me and they find that it's a fit, like, sure, go ahead. Then maybe I'll take a leave of absence. And if after a year I'm still down with the startup, then maybe I'll drop out. So that's what I told him, and he was like, okay. Then I'll connect you with the guy that I know. The guy that he connected me with, so the Soma guy, he connected me with someone who goes to Stanford. So I'm talking with the fool from Stanford. Bro, really, really cool dude. I'll probably meet up with him when I go tomorrow, but he's a cool guy. So I'm talking with that guy. He's like, okay, super awesome. We'll see where it goes. Okay, things progress. And the fool from Stanford connects me with the actual recruiter who's like trying to recruit for the startup. And then that guy calls me, we get to know each other, and it's like, okay, he gives me the okay. And then he passes me on to the person who's actually at the startup. So basically, the person who's gonna be my boss if I were to join the startup. So that guy, we hop on a call, he asked me a couple questions, and then he's like, okay, you're good to go. Do this take-home interview, and then we'll see how it fits. But keep in mind, this was all within, man, I gotta look at my calls now. Let's see the Slack channel. The first initial message was on the 16th. Today's the 22nd, so that was, okay, it was 6 days ago. So not even a full week. 6 days ago, I get that initial message. After that initial message, literally the next day, I hop on a call with the first guy who was from Stanford, and the call with the second guy who's a recruiter, and then he passes me on to the guy at the startup. And then go over the weekend. The weekend was super chill. Went to Angel Island. I'll talk more about that later, but phenomenal trip. Honestly, probably my highlight so far being out here. But we go to Angel Island, and then we finally are able to schedule a call yesterday. Wait, yeah, that was yesterday with the guy at the startup. Call went well. He's like, okay, I'll pass you on to the take-home interview, the take-home interview project. I do the take-home interview project that night. I did it. I finished it up this morning at a.m. Sent it to him, and then he took a look at it today. And he was like, okay, it looks good. Now, can you come in tonight? So I'm telling you this entire story, but we'll see how it goes. I'm about to head there in about 45 minutes. 45 minutes exactly. We'll see how it goes. Honestly, when I put in my application, I feel like this is how it's been going. Like, this is the story of my life. I just put in my application and then play it by ear, bro. But I put in my application just thinking, like, I probably might not get it. It's honestly like, they pay a lot. And I'm like, bro, what? So we'll see how it goes. Put in my application. Honestly, didn't think I would get very far. Turns out I made it to the third round, and we'll see how it goes tonight. I think tonight's supposed to be like a culture fit interview. I'll probably check in after and maybe finish up the podcast, but I really, really wanted to record this before I head out there just to like, this is in the thick of it. I mean, like, I haven't even talked about how big of a pivotal decision that this could be. Because if I do this, yeah, if I end up getting the thing and then going down this whole rabbit hole, my life will be very different than if not. But who knows? Maybe it wouldn't have been, and maybe it would have been the exact same. Either way, we play it by ear. I'll see y'all in a bit. Okay, big news. I'm coming after a couple of days after that final round interview. I did not get the role, which low-key kind of bummed about, but also kind of like relieved in a way because man, that could have set my life. I think that is one of those pivotal moments that like it could take a left or a right, and depending on which way, my life could have, I think, gone in very different directions. But either way, I'm not dropping out of school. At least I'm not dropping out because of that specific startup. But who knows? Maybe in the future, I might throw in an application for another startup. And I don't know. We play by ear. We play by ear. But I think either way, this was a good reminder and honestly a phenomenal experience for, I don't know, failing forward. Because first of all, the experience itself, he asked me questions about growth and marketing that really for the first time I thought about it. Like, for example, we go into the first round interview and he's asking me, okay, you've kind of looked at our product. What things would you do to grow this product? And then I started thinking, started like spitballing ideas, and yeah, and it went fairly well. But in the final round interview, because the second round was like a take-home project, I did that. In the final round, he hit me with questions that I honestly didn't even understand. Like one of his questions was, after we've taken over this specific market, where else would you expand? And I answered it in a way that I didn't really fully understand the question, and so I didn't honestly give a good answer, which I think is part of actually definitely the reason why I didn't get the role. But like I said, that experience, I don't know, was really, really good and impactful for me that I can take forward into future interviews for sure. And I think at the base level of all of this is that it teaches me how to think in a way that I really wasn't thinking before. Like how I would go in if I were running a business, where I would go to next, how I would grow the market, who I would go after. I think like questions like those, I think were super helpful. But it also reminded me of something that my sister said. So I told this whole story to my sister, and then she was like telling me her story of a time where she made it to a final round interview. Then this was before I found out I didn't get it. But she's telling me how she made it to a final round interview that she had to go in for. And it wasn't easy because, keep in mind, my brother had this big thing that was going on in Chicago. So she flew from Utah to Chicago, went to the family thing, and then flew back just for that interview, and then flew out like the next day for Arizona. And all of that flying around was useless because she ended up not getting the role. And she asked me, she was like, Dean, how are you so okay? Or how are you so in love with failure? And I answered it like kind of off the cuff, like, oh, I love failure. Like failure is awesome. But after thinking about it more, I'm like, okay, back it up. It's not necessarily that I absolutely love failure, but it's more so that I think it is more helpful to look at failure in a positive light rather than a negative light. And it reminded me of something, man, I talked about this ages ago in a podcast, but really the big difference between pursuing success and avoiding failure. Because prioritizing one over the other actually comes out to very different outcomes, where if someone is always trying to avoid failure, then they're not going to take the steps necessary to achieve success. For example, I was thinking about this in the context of Northwestern. If you look at the acceptance rate, it is extremely low, in the single digits percentage rates. And so if I purely looked at that and I was only afraid of, or I was only wanting to avoid failure, then I would have never applied. Whereas if I'm trying to pursue success, I'm not afraid of failure, then I'm willing to take the L and I'm willing to get denied from that application, even for the single percentage chance of getting into the school. And I think that's super valuable, and taking that into something like this with interviews, like I'm willing to take the failure. I'm willing to not get the job if it means there's a slight percentage chance that I actually will get the job. And in my head, that seems to apply to a whole bunch of other aspects, not just in job applications or school applications, but honestly, like in life, in relationships, like willing to go through those hard times with the people you love just for the small chance that you will find the one, or at least that's what is in my head. Anyways, that's the story for this episode, along with the lesson. Now moving on to the philosophizing section, where I share random things that I have philosophized about over the week. There was the one conversation that I had where I'm pretty sure it was part of the final round interview was me going in and having dinner with the team. So I went to the office, and one of the coolest things that honestly stuck out to me the most was just the energy in that room. Like all of these people were so locked in and were so sold on this mission that we're going to 10x this company and we're going to hit it by next year. Like, they were all so sold on it. And I thought that was really, really cool. But in particular, I talked with one dude at the startup. He was employee number 3. So he was there literally since like day 1. And keep in mind, now they've grown to, I think, coming up on 20 employees. And he was telling me about his journey, about being part of the startup life. And one thing he said that stuck out to me a lot was the startup life is full of intense sprints and a long-term marathon. And for some reason, that really hit me hard because I found it so true. Where in a startup, a lot of it is like always on the run, always on the go, where you gotta ship the next feature or you gotta close the next customer by the end of the week. But it's important not to forget that although those intense sprints are super, super important, what's also important is the long-term game, is the infinite game, the marathon. And I found how, I don't know, I think you could apply this also in life in general. Whereas like in health, for example, you could have those intense sprints where you're running after a goal. I'm trying to hit X amount of pounds in X amount of time, and we're gonna do this. And then you go on that sprint, but the question is, what happens after the sprint? Because the sprint is going to end. And that's where I think it's important to keep in mind that it's a marathon. Like, of course, those sprints are important. What's also important is not forgetting that there's a marathon and it's an infinite game and what comes after the sprints. Now, the other thing I thought about, it was from a book that I read that I'll talk about later in this episode. It's a classic. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. But part of this book hit on an idea that I think really applied to me, especially this week. But it was an idea called existential vacuum. And existentialism, it's basically like the study of existence in a way. It's like more accurately the study of meaning of life. Like, what is the meaning of someone's life? And this term called existential vacuum, it's the point where you realize you don't have like a meaning, or I think a more accurate way of putting that would be you lose your sense of meaning in life. And that is what existential vacuum is. And so in the book, it was a guy named Viktor Frankl, I think is how you pronounce it. But Viktor lived through World War II as a Jew. And he was in the Holocaust. And as he was going through that, he was sharing some of his experiences of how he firsthand saw these prisoners and how they lived through it and how they made it out. But one thing he said was this sense of existential vacuum. And you could tell who gave up, basically. Who gave up? Because there seemed to be some type of correlation between those people who gave up, who lost their sense of meaning in life, and those people who actually lost their lives. But the reason that I think I've been thinking about this is because there comes a point, I think in our day and age, we're not fighting for our lives out here. I mean, maybe some people are, but for the majority of people, especially ones listening to this podcast, bro, like odds are you're chilling. Odds are you probably have a roof over your head, clothes on your back, a comfortable bed to sleep in. And the more pressing things is honestly, when it comes to existential vacuum, is like social media and food. I was thinking about is like, especially as I've been turning more and more towards, and I'll talk about this more, but like wasting my time on anime or Instagram or whatever. But a phrase stuck with me, and it's happened honestly a couple of times where this existential vacuum hits me and I'm like, man, I got to turn things around. But it's the realization that no amount of X will ever be enough. No amount of cookies, no amount of anime, no amount of Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever. No amount of X will ever be enough. And I think the reason this really hits hard when it comes to this existential vacuum idea is because it comes back to the meaning in life. Like, if one's meaning in life doesn't place any type of importance on social media, then why in the world would I be wasting my time, hours and hours every single day on social media? But it's more so like realizing that all this time I'm spending on this one thing, or all this effort I'm putting into this one thing, like none of it matters because it doesn't bring any meaning or any fulfillment to my life. And I think that's kind of how I see existential vacuum and this idea of existential vacuum playing out in my life. But honestly, a fantastic book that I would highly recommend. Anyways, going on to L's of the week, where I share L's that I took the past week. I think the biggest L I already shared was not getting the job. Maybe disguised in a dub, some might say, because I didn't have to drop out of school, but an L nonetheless, a learning lesson nonetheless. Maybe another L that I'd add to that is a couple days ago, I think 2 days ago, me and my entire class, we all visited Stanford. We're going around the area, Palo Alto, Silicon Valley, Sand Hill Road, looking at all the venture firms and stuff. But something really cool happened is that Reid Hoffman gave a lecture there, and we were able to pull up and see what the lecture was all about. But basically woke up at 8 in the morning, and our day was packed until 8 p.m. Like, it was literally a full 12-hour day where we went back to back to back with meetings and lectures and lunch, all these different things. At the very end of the day, we're driving back, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, bro, how did we do so much this entire day? Because I was exhausted at that point. But how do we do so much, yet do so little? Because if we think back to, like, I was thinking back to that experience where I went into the startup office and all the people over there, they were locked in, like, doing the work, like deep work. Whereas I'm over here doing these like entire day trips, not really putting any effort into like achieving some project or like working on some goal. And then my roommate who was sitting next to me, he was like, bro, like, don't you measure things more than simply what you get done in a day? Like, I don't know. It was a pretty enjoyable day for me, but that's what he said to me. He was like, don't you enjoy more out of a day rather than simply the work that you put into it? And I think I stopped to pause there because there was a lot of truth in what he said. And even though it was an L in the sense that I did so much yet didn't work on anything that day, I think that probably the bigger L is something like I didn't appreciate that day for what it was. And although, yes, maybe I wouldn't do it again, or I wouldn't want to do it again, I think there's some value in just appreciating the ability to go and do that, to like go to a Reid Hoffman lecture. I mean, when am I ever gonna meet Reid Hoffman, bro? Founder of LinkedIn. That's kind of wild. I just wrote the post on it, on how I met Reid Hoffman. Man's commented on the LinkedIn post. Big dub, big dub. Maybe that'll be my dub for this section. Anyways, moving on to the weekly roundup. This is where I share random things I found throughout the week, quotes, books, articles, things like that. For the first thing is a quote, because after reading Viktor Frankl and his thoughts on man's search for meaning, one thing that really stood out to me in that entire book was how, I don't know, just how rough he had it. Because it changes my perspective, and like it shifts the narrative, like my baseline level for what a hard life is. And I'm like, bro, I think I have a hard life. I think like these talking kids have hard life. Bro, look at those guys who made it through the Holocaust. Like, they went through some things. So I wanted to, I don't know, read up more of like history stuff within the Holocaust. So I started reading Anne Frank and her diary, and I haven't finished all the way through. I think I probably read it when I was in middle school, and by read it I mean looked up the summaries of it, so I didn't really read it. But anyways, I'm reading it now, and one of the quotes from that book really stood out to me. Now, I'll read it right now and then kind of give my explanation on it. Anne Frank said, "Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I've never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on, neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Oh well, it doesn't matter. I feel like writing, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest." And that stood out so much to me, because that's literally what this podcast is. And if you think about her situation, here she was, a 13-year-old girl, and she's like, oh, well, I'm just going to start writing. Not because I want the whole world to know what I'm going through. And keep in mind, she didn't even know what she was going through. All she knew was that something is going on and they have to go into hiding. And so she does that, and she starts this narrative because there's a slight chance, a slight opportunity that maybe she might want to leave something behind in the world. And it didn't even matter whether other people liked it or not, whether other people read it, but more so it was for her. It was for her in the moment to get things off her chest. And I saw a lot of parallels in what I'm doing with this, with Legacy Voyage. Because one of the other motivations why I wanted to read Anne Frank is because it is kind of similar to what I'm doing right now. It's like her diary opened up to the world. This is literally like my diary opened up to the world. Everything that I'm going through opened up to the world, and like how I'm thinking through things in real time. So that one really stuck with me. The question I found is, do you genuinely want to seek truth, or do you merely want to be right? And I think I heard it on a debate, because of course, super into philosophy, especially philosophy of religion. And a big part of philosophy of religion are these debates, like atheists versus Christians, or who is right, Christians or Catholics. I mean, like Protestants or Catholics, things like that. And with a lot of these debates, something I notice a lot is that many people, instead of really yearning for the truth and trying to get at what is true, they merely want to be right. And I saw this in myself as well. When I was a kid, like there were so many times I was this high school sophomore, and I would start all of these debates and I would start all of these arguments, not necessarily because I was trying to figure out what's true, but simply because I wanted to be right. I wanted to argue and debate. Whereas now I'm much more in a place of like, I'm trying to get at the truth. And if I find out that something I believe actually is not true, then of course I will change my mind on that because that's what I'm trying to get at. Which I think, at least, is probably a healthier mindset than always wanting to be right. But on to the podcast that I found for this week. It is a podcast episode about Stratechery. It was by Acquired. Acquired is like basically a business podcast. They talk about how different businesses were founded and the founding story behind a whole bunch of businesses. They did one on Meta, on Snapchat, all these different things. But this episode, they did it on a newsletter called Stratechery. And I just got into it and I'm kind of hooked with it. But it's basically just a newsletter where he shares like a bunch of strategy stuff that's going on in the tech world. Pretty interesting. Would recommend checking it out if you're into like this whole tech world, especially because I'm in SF in venture now and diving into this whole tech world, and it's pretty interesting. And then the book that I found, of course, like I mentioned, was Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Yeah, it's an interesting read, fascinating read. Would highly recommend. I'll probably do a summary on this later, so I guess be on the lookout for that one. And then last but not least, the article that I found is talking about OpenAI and how they're introducing this thing called Operator. And it is a fascinating release. I really want to get into it. I don't have the pro version for ChatGPT, but Operator is basically like ChatGPT if it were your personal assistant. So instead of going to ChatGPT and being like, tell me the best hotels in San Francisco, and then it gives you a couple hotels and then you go and like start booking those hotels. Instead, you go to Operator and you're like, book me the best hotel in San Francisco for this budget in this area, and it'll go and do it. So Operator basically does like, it can operate a browser for you. So you can do everything you can do in a browser. Order groceries, buy NBA tickets, things like that. And it's pretty cool. But it's the rise of these AI agents that do work on one's behalf, like a very specified task that it can do on one's behalf. And I think it is pretty fascinating. But anyways, that's all for the other sections. On to the final section of Legacy Voyage. This is my life update, everything going on in my life. Of course, I do this by the 4 things that I think matter most to me. These are in this order: my God, myself, my people, and my work. First update on my God. This past week, I've been working on summarizing a book. And I talked about this, I think, in the last podcast episode, that I wanted to write like an essay about why I'm choosing to commit to living a Christian life or to being Christian. And I realized that in order to do it, I need to go back and write a summary on one of the most pivotal books that has influenced my faith journey, which is kind of like a big deal, I think. Like, if this is the most pivotal book, it's probably really powerful. And for me, that book was Taking Pascal's Wager by Michael Rota. This was an interesting philosophical defense for committing a Christian life. And so I've been working on writing the summary, almost done with it, honestly. I think I'll probably finish that up tomorrow, but I think reevaluating that and really, like I mentioned, trying to get at what is true rather than merely being right, I think was helpful in some ways, like reigniting or re-evaluating why I'm choosing to commit to live this Christian life. And a part of that, which is something I do want to work on, a part of that is the spiritual side of Christianity, which I can honestly say I'm not the best at, or at least it's something that I have in the past not been the best at. And of course, the only way to get better is to practice. So trying to build up that habit of the spiritual side, which means like, I don't know, just being more, how would you say, being more in line with my emotions, things like that. Which, thinking now, like, I'm a fairly logical person, but of course, one of the things every logical person must learn is how to be emotional, because emotions are quite important in the world. Next update is on myself. Bro, I can't lie, things have been rough. In terms of, I mean, there are days where I'm like killing it, on top of things, getting everything done. And then there are days that I talked about like where I get this existential vacuum and like completely run away from confronting my emotions. And when I get hit with like stress and anxiety and all these different things that come, especially when I found out And this is like the real of living this life. Like when I found out I didn't get the interview, man, was I initially like hit hard. Not super hit hard where I like cry myself to sleep or whatever, but like it hit me hard enough to where I just went home and didn't do any work and stayed up watching anime. I mean, like that type of wasting time. And so I think I got hit with one of those last night, actually, like this revigoration of I want to get my life back on track, basically. And what that means is getting my sleep back on track, because I think sleep is probably one of the most important things in health. And my sleep has been horrendous, bro. Absolutely horrendous this past week. So definitely something I want to work on, getting my sleep back on track. And I think along with that, of course, comes the diet, comes the working out and exercising and things like that. But sleep will be my big focus for this week. And next update is on my people. Last weekend, I'm not sure if I talked about this, but last weekend, went to Angel Island and it was awesome. I went with a couple other kids in the class. Probably my highlight so far being out here in SF. We literally spent the whole day just walking around the island. It was really fun, honestly. So that was awesome. And something that I'm noticing out here, especially, is like this yearning to connect with people who lock in. Because I noticed it when I visited that startup, like those people, they lock in. And I'm trying to surround myself with people like them, bro. I think that'd be sick. So I think that would be pretty cool. And then transitioning over to the final update, which is on my work. One thing that happened is the YC startup that I'm working with right now, I legit told the guy, I was like, hey, I applied for this other startup. I didn't think I would make it very far, but ended up getting the final round. Depending on how things go, I might have to step back from roundabout. And he was like, he was super, how would you say? He was super nice about it and helpful. He would be like, oh, no worries. If you have to do that, for sure. Like we'll stay in touch, of course, and I'm more than happy to help you out or recommend you to just let me know. So that was really cool. Oh, the word I was looking for is supportive. He was super supportive about that. I ended up not getting it, so of course I'm gonna stay with Roundabout. But honestly, I'm trying to get more involved with it, bro. Like get my skills up, learn some different things. I think that would be pretty awesome. And also, if I could legit grow the startup, I mean, that would be a pretty cool story to talk about. So that would be cool. And then, oh, I forgot to talk about this. And then the big decision that I kind of made this last night, maybe I'll think about it more within the next week or so, but something I've thought about a lot is shutting down polytaps. And when I say shutting down polytaps, it means like the thing that I've been using for all of my CRM and websites and stuff for all the different businesses that I've been working with is polytaps. And one of like the main clients that I had left, which honestly, I'm not like too hung up on because I really wasn't doing much for him in the first place. But what this means is that I can't keep paying, because it doesn't make much financial sense. I can't keep paying the $297 a month or whatever for it is for the software. So I think within the next week or so, I'm going to transition all of the websites that I've made so far for the businesses that I have over to Webflow, which might take a while, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it in my head. Like easily 2 hours, but I think it would be worth it. And then cancel polytaps. And so I might keep running We Are Nesian in the background and not really putting too much effort into that. But yeah, that's probably the biggest update. And a large part of why I wanted to do that and shift my focus away from polytaps or We Are Nesian, because I want to pivot over to becoming technical. And it's one of the ideas that I had for a while now, but really being out here in SF and seeing the value of being technical, being able to think of an idea, go out and build that idea that I have in my head and bring it into reality. Because I think in the startup, there are two skills that are super, super valuable. And being really good in one is amazing. Being good in both is like awesome. So I think now I've kind of honed my skills so far on the selling side. The other skill, apart from selling the product, is building the product. So I'm going to focus these next couple months on becoming technical and building a product. And so I think I'll share the journey of what that entails. But the goal that I set for myself, or at least the way I plan on becoming technical, is building an app every 2 weeks or so. Maybe it'll be like 1 week if I can, but building an app. And an app, I don't know, I don't have too high qualifications for what the app must be, but just an app. Some random ideas I've had. One is like an AI tour guide because I've gone on so many trips, and it would be cool to like pop my earphones in or AirPods in, like walk around, and it could track my location, and depending where I'm at and where I'm facing, and be like, okay, the thing you're looking at now is the building built in whatever by whoever in a certain time frame to honor, like, I don't know. It would just tell all the different historical aspects of what a normal tour guide would. And yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. And then I could ask questions and be like, oh, but what about this? And then it would answer. Or another thing was like an AI accountability coach or AI life coach, where it could give you advice. Oh, maybe be like a relationship coach. Ooh, I like that idea. Because I don't know, I've heard a lot of people in class, especially like my age, talk about, oh, whenever I have to text someone, I'll like run it through ChatGPT first. Oh, so maybe I make a texting coach. And the differential would be that it's over text. Like you text a thing, hey, what should I respond to this person? And then it'll text you back and maybe respond to, I don't know. Random ideas. We'll see what I actually end up building. But either way, the end goal is to become technical. I'm gonna be a S weapon like never seen before. But anyways, that's all for this one. Potentially might start a newsletter. And by start a newsletter, it would basically just mean I upload like my podcast notes onto LinkedIn as the newsletter. Like not too much of a big jump or commitment. But either way, that is the vibes. I'll catch y'all next week, hopefully, if I am on time with this. But see y'all later. I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.